What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer Podcast. It's been a minute. I'm your host, co-host, Reed Simpson, here with my absentee co-host for the last month. Not his fault. Major life events, major things going on. Dylan Wilcox. Dylan, how you doing? How was your last month or so? I feel like we haven't talked in a very long time.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. Busy. Went down to Florida to celebrate my mom's birthday, then had weddings and engagement photos and just life.
Did y'all have engagement photos recently too?
They're coming up, but it's like a whole process.
Okay. Yeah. Shelby and I, we did ours like 2 weeks ago.
Like it's like planning out the outfits in advance, and it's like
locations.
I have two things that I will likely wear, but sure, we can plan all this out. So it's been busy, but all good. We
did ours. I did one outfit the whole time. Shelby, my fiance, had 4 different ones at 2 different locations. I just stayed in the same thing. Of course, it was 99 degrees outside with like 70% humidity. I'm in a button down and a jacket because screw Texas. This was like October 1st, maybe, by the way. So like, come on. I mean, let's get with this fall weather program.
I'm very much worried about the exact opposite up here. Surprising to no one, but yeah, ours are. I want to say next Thursday. I should know that, but they're 2 Thursdays from now even. So I don't know why we're planning so far in advance, but it's 2 Thursdays from now, and I am terrified of absolutely freezing my rear end off because we have all these cool locations picked out in our hometown, grew up in the same hometown, and I'm like, for October 27th in Michigan. It could snow for all we know, but I guess it'll make for good pictures if it does.
Yeah, it will. So this isn't a wedding podcast, even though both of us are in the process of planning a wedding, which we've mentioned before. But we haven't talked in about a month, and there's been a lot going on in the world of football, the world of soccer. It was kind of like when we were texting earlier today, it's like, where do we even start? Well, what do we start with? Do we even recap games? What do we do? So I think the last time we talked, our last episode, was with Nick talking about jerseys. But before that, I think it was when Boley came out and said that stuff about an all-star game. So it's been a long time. But we are going to start with the Premier League. We're about a quarter of the way through the season, depending on if you played 8 or 9 games. 38 games in a Premier League season. Yes, that's correct, right? 38, yes. Not 36. Yes. I don't know why my brain always wants to go to 36, but it is 38. So it's the Premier League. It only makes sense to start talking about how 2-time, 3-time defending champ, 4 out of the last 5, I know for sure. I think it's 2-time defending champ, Man City, and their summer signee, the signing of the summer, without a doubt. I mean, we kind of knew if he could stay healthy, it would be. I really don't think people, especially you and me, we weren't questioning his ability to come into the Premier League and score goals. It would be whether he would be able to stay on the field. That is Erling Haaland, and my God, has he stayed on the field, and my God, has he backed goals. Dylan, you've played Man City. What have you seen? Obviously they're appointment television, so most people watch them. But what's really stood out to you about this year's Man City team, the title favorites in the Premier League?
So for me, it really feels like a team that's finally. This sounds crazy for a team that's won 4 out of the 5, like you said, Premier League titles. But it seems like a team built around a specific identity. Before, it was just Man City was so solid at everything. Over the course of 38 games, they were going to be the best team. But now we're talking about a Man City team that is built around, earlier in the year I said arguably, but built around the best goal scorer in the world. Sorry, Mbappe. Sorry, Lewa. It's really not close in my opinion at this point.
Goal scorer, without a doubt. It's all,
yeah. Maybe not best all-around player. I certainly see complaints and think they're somewhat warranted when people talk about his individual creation. He's been doing all of this on. I haven't seen the most recent numbers, but 3-4 weeks ago we were just seeing like 90
2 touches, 2 goals.
Yeah, 90 touches through 8 games, and he's got 12 goals or something like just absolutely gross numbers that we've never seen before. So I do understand that there is that complaint on him, but it's a team built around the best goal scorer in the game and a team with players around the best goal scorer in the game that are the best at what they do. I mean, I know you're not the biggest Phil Foden fan, but he's been an absolutely phenomenal
I love Phil Foden. I do. I really do love Phil Foden. But I said he's been overhyped as like a young superstar thus far. I've eaten my words the past couple of weeks because he's started to put on clinics. But I guess I can't judge him for what I see in the England side. I can't judge anybody for what they are in the English side. I saw Phil Foden with all the tools, and I'm like, okay, he's good. Yes, he's good. But he hasn't really put together like just a dominating performance, and he has. And literally ever since I've sent that text to you, he's put up like 8.5s and 9s on SofaScore like every week.
And I think a lot of it is like
Foden.
He's a player that while he is good at creating is good when he has the space to create. He can create in small spaces, but he's better at, as many players are, better at creating in open spaces and sure. The attention Haaland commands like allows him to do that at a level we haven't seen before. And then you also have KDB who can create out of literally nothing. And
he just puts the ball wherever he wants.
And forces balls in where nobody else could force the ball into. And Haaland will pick those balls up that nobody else could pick. It sounds over dramatic, but it's a match made in heaven. Like I don't think, I mean, I in my on and off 15 years of Premier League soccer have seen a team this much fun to watch. Maybe not this beatable or anything like that, but they're at, like you said, they're appointment TV like I haven't seen. Certainly not like I've seen since I've become like this pseudo diehard to the point where I have a podcast about it. But like they are just absolutely incredible to watch. Even the way, I know it was just FC Copenhagen. We'll get into Champions League a little later, but even the way they looked against them, down a man for 75 minutes, like it was an exciting brand of football to watch. And it's like, how many teams in the world on the road in a hostile environment could put on that entertaining of a show? Ended in a draw, didn't get the result I'm sure they wanted or needed to guarantee qualification. They'll qualify anyways. But
they've since qualified for the knockout stage.
Oh,
they haven't locked up first in their group yet.
Okay. But still, like they're a team that can do things I just haven't seen very often on the pitch. And I think a lot of that starts with Haaland. A lot of the team around him hasn't changed in the offseason, but he was the perfect piece.
They subtracted a lot, honestly, around him. But City, I mean, they've spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, but they might be, outside of Madrid, they might be the most well-run club in soccer. They've done it so well. They've spent money wisely. I saw a TikTok about an hour before we came on. You can throw $100 million at certain players. Look at Liverpool and
Darwin
Núñez. Obviously, that might work out down the line, but just because Pep spends money, it doesn't always guarantee success. And he buys the players he knows will fit. And Pep has 3 systems he's kind of played throughout his time at Bayern, Barcelona, and now Manchester City, and he's able to adapt to the players he has around him, and he's done it with Haaland so well. I think last point I'll make on Man City is we've seen João Cancelo is one of the best left backs in the world, if not the best. I mean, Teo Hernandez and a few other guys. I think Haaland's opened up his ability to really shine as a superstar. I also think we'll start seeing a lot more out of Jack Grealish. He'll be able to become inverted on that left side. João Cancelo will be able to, slide up the field on the wing, and then Grealish will be able to kind of do what he does best, but not have so much pressure to where he always has to finish because Haaland will be right there. We've already seen an improvement in him this year. I think the last note you and I both have is do they have the depth? And there's been a lot of guys we haven't seen a whole lot of, a lot of guys that I think Calvin Phillips has been injured. Do they have the depth? I don't know, but they have a lot of talent. That's for sure.
Yeah, for me, I think they certainly have the depth to compete in 1 or 2 competitions. We talked about this in the last week or so. There was that, I think from a Spurs account, a tweet out about they're a Haaland injury away from Arsenal winning the league. And like I'm not going to go that far. I do think there are questions about depth. Obviously, if you lose a player like Haaland, they're in trouble. If Arsenal lost Jesus, they'd be in trouble. Like there's some players you're just in trouble if you lose. But even if
Tottenham loses Harry Kane,
right?
Like,
and you could go team by team. That Ivan Toney from Brentford, they're possibly in relegation battle. Like that, you can
Toney
say
from
that
Brentford, they're like, in the relegation zone.
You can say that about a lot of sides. So like that's not really even how I'm looking at it. But I think they have enough depth to strongly compete in one or two competitions. If they choose to make that Premier League and Champions League, I think there could be some questions that fixture schedule being so condensed this year on top of the World Cup is going to be crazy. We've talked about the benefit they have from Haaland not playing in the World Cup, and I don't think that can really be understated, honestly.
Massive.
However, the rest of their team is all pretty much, I don't know for a fact, but I believe the rest of their team is pretty much all going to be at the World Cup. So that, on top of the condensed fixture schedule, is going to be a question. Will they be able to put their all into the Champions League and the Premier League? I think they probably do. I think they'll probably make at least the semis in Champions League and win the Premier League comfortably.
I also think we're going to see the most active January market we've ever seen, which because of this weird year. So that's another spot where teams like City, Arsenal can add pieces.
See, if I'm a and we can kind of use this to transition into Arsenal a little bit.
Yeah,
but
I was just
Arsenal,
about to do the same.
I don't know if I want to spend. I was talking to one of my really good Arsenal buddies. Like, I don't think I really want to spend this January window if I'm them, unless obviously extenuating circumstances, somebody gets hurt at the World Cup or in the next 2 months. Then that changes everything. But as things sit now, like, this is the best Arsenal team we've seen in a very long time. I know it hurts you to say this, but they're friggin' for real. They just went 3-1 on Tottenham, 3-2 on Liverpool, and those were two big, like, they haven't played a lot yet. What are they going to do when they play these big clubs? And they were fairly convincing wins. They've won 8 out of their first 9. They have second best goal differential. Like, I don't think the question is, can they compete in the Premier League? It's, can they compete for first? And I don't think they're quite there yet. So I think personally they'd be smart to not get in an arms race to try and compete with the likes of City and stand pat, add some depth. They need some depth in that, especially in that defensive midfield. There isn't a lot of depth behind Partey right now. I've seen a lot of Tielemans talks. I think that would be a phenomenal signing, but like, I don't see going out and splashing 150 million in January being, or even 100 million in January being very smart on them. Like, don't fix what's not broken and then set yourself up. Just get qualified for Champions League and then go all in the summer, because this Arsenal side is, they're also, I said this a few weeks ago, but probably a month and a half ago now, because we haven't recorded much, but they're also appointment TV for me. They're incredibly fascinating to watch. I think Arteta's done an absolutely phenomenal job with, it is a talented side, but it's not a City talented side. And for me, they're just as much fun to watch, honestly.
Yeah. So doing just the complete transition to Arsenal, I think Arsenal is probably out of the top, say the Cities, Tottenhams, Arsenals, Chelsea's of the world. Liverpool's been decimated by injuries more than most teams will be. But out of that group, Arsenal has the potential to be hurt the most by injuries, I think, just because their starting 11 is very good, world class. Top of the league. If they get a few injuries here and there, say, Jesus goes down for 2 months or, 6 weeks, whatever, and Partey, who has a lot of injury problems, and I honestly hate even saying his name because he was never cleared of these allegations that are against him. It was technicality or whatever the case may be. I just don't feel good talking about him, but he's an incredible player.
Yeah.
I think Arsenal needs like a Jamie Vardy type. It's somebody cheap just to come in, play that backup number 9 role, somebody who has the experience, maybe has won a trophy or two, and then some sort of defensive midfielder or kind of a number 8 type who leans more number 6, kind of like a Pierre-Emile Højbjerg that Tottenham has, who's a 6 but can also play the 8 like he does for Denmark. So speaking to Arsenal, very good squad. I, as the resident Tottenham fan, have to point out that there's going to be some sort of regression to the mean, and that might just be second place because they are very, very good. They're going to drop points at some point in time. They have to, right? I would imagine it's that also with the North London derby, the 3-1 win versus Tottenham. That nobody needs to read in anything into that. Tottenham wins the North London derby at home. Arsenal wins it at home. Like that's what happens. Tottenham beat Arsenal, or Arsenal beat Tottenham 3-1 at the Emirates last year.
So like I see and hear that argument, and I know you can't just look at like the basic numbers, but the one goal Tottenham scored was a penalty, and then prior to the red card, 2-1, and possession dominant for Arsenal, and shot dominant for Arsenal.
You know how I feel about possession dominant,
but also shot dominant, shots on target dominant, like corner dominant, like any number you look at from that game, or even just the eye test. Like Arsenal dominated after the red card, but they were looking fairly dominant pre-red card, and I don't think that can just be chalked up to home field advantage, if you will. Like, well,
you
throw
look
these
at this
teams
game
at Wembley, and I think Arsenal wins. I think of everything in betting terms. I'm taking Arsenal -1. Like Arsenal will win that game, and I think there's a good chance they win by multiple goals on a neutral site. Like at this point in time, I just haven't seen enough from Tottenham to believe in them. Both teams.
The good news
healthy.
is though they don't play on a neutral site.
But I'm saying, hypothetically, they meet in the FA Cup final. Yeah. Like, I just think when it all comes down to it, I think that's the most equal way to compare two teams. Yeah. And, yes, they did their job when they were supposed to, and Tottenham, the way the league's set up, will have their chance to do their job as they're supposed to. But at this point in time, I think Arsenal is a bit better side, but I think the concerns about depth are completely warranted. Like,
Arsenal's absolutely a better side than Tottenham right now, but I will say – last year's game at the Emirates, Arsenal versus Tottenham, was more of a bloodbath than this one. Maybe almost double the bloodbath that this one was.
So last year,
I think
very different Arsenal side last year. Right, right. So last year.
Right.
So not this year.
I'm just saying you can't really that's just the way it always is. Like a worse Arsenal team last year beat a Champions League Tottenham team last year granted it was Nuno's Tottenham team, so whatever. But I don't know. Just with those especially with that rivalry, it's almost 50-50 the last 10 years home and away. We'll see. We don't know ultimately what will happen at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when they play. But I agree with you. Right now on a neutral field, Arsenal wins. But quite frankly, I just don't care, because as long as we keep just doing whatever the fuck we do on a football field, which changes match to match, it will be there at the end, and it'll just be up to who's going to get second place, I think. Right, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. And that's the other funny thing. Like I know, and there'll also be another good transition right into Tottenham. I know, like, there's pride, especially when you're talking about rivals, and there's extra money involved. But like personally, like, at this point, both Tottenham and Arsenal, barring any dramatic injuries, which you can never predict. So if neither of them qualify, don't come back and snip at this and shove it in my face on TikTok. But like, they're both in the Champions League.
There's far worse predictions out there on TikTok that have been snipped at the end of the season. Trust me.
Like, these two teams are qualifying for Champions League. I understand there's like, you want bragging rights and stuff, but like for me, if I'm running a side, and it's easy for me as a Newcastle fan because our true rivals are in Championship 2, like, so maybe I just don't understand, but like, I just want to qualify for especially if I'm Arsenal. I do everything I can to just secure a spot in the Champions League next year. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans would probably agree with that sentiment. Like, at this point, as much as they want to finish ahead of Spurs, because they probably find Spurs fans obnoxious and they hate them with everything, just like you hate Arsenal fans with everything, at the end of the day, the disappointment Arsenal has seen in the last 10 years, they just want Champions League. And I think there's a good chance management kind of is on that same page, and doesn't do that big splash and goes, you know what? I think we're the better side than Spurs. if they think they're better equipped for the future than Spurs, no reason to splash in January and just kind of go about their business. I do think there's, like you said, and I said, there is depth issues. I mean, Jesus goes down, they're in big trouble. We saw from last year, and Keita is just not a Premier League out-and-out striker. So there would be question marks. But even if a Jesus injury happens, I do still them seeing like probably a top 4 finish. But
and it's not everywhere on the field. That I mean, if they have, even if Saliba goes down, they still have Ben White and Gabriel. Like they have good depth at a lot of the positions on the field. It's just
some very vital positions for
really not
style.
A whole lot. Go ahead.
The play style and the way their team is built, there are 2 very big question marks on depth. And I think injuries to Jesus or to Partey would be extremely damaging, but not so damaging because the rest of the team is so solid and deep that it would threaten them not qualifying for Champions League.
And another thing you have to look at, Arsenal's not going to have many guys in the World Cup. I don't think Jesus might crack the Brazil roster, but he hasn't.
He'll be on the roster, but it's not like he's going to be seeing so much game time he gets hurt or anything.
I think Martinelli should be on Brazil's roster, but look at Brazil's wingers. I mean, who the hell is like?
Who are you taking him over? Yeah,
Odegaard won't be in the World Cup. You know, him and Holland. I think they're both Norway, right?
Saka will be out in the round of 16.
Yeah, I guess Saka will be there. Saliba will probably make the French squad. So they've got a few guys here and there, but
playing as much because he's so young and he's trying to step into the team that is defending champs. That's honestly a really good point when you compare them to the rest of that.
Like Spurs will have so many guys in the World Cup.
Yeah, like the Spurs and like I said, City. Yeah, Holland's not, but so much of that the rest of that team is going to be playing. So that's just another thing that kind of plays into Arsenal's favor a little bit. Even the guys that do go won't be seeing. They won't be leaned on like Harry Kane is being leaned
Son,
on.
I'm concerned about Son because he's going to try to carry that. I mean, South Korea is probably not going to make it out of the group, but he's going to do his damnedest and he's going to give it his all.
Stay healthy for 3 games and get your ass back to London.
Yeah, that's true. Let's move on to Spurs just for a minute because we'll talk about them a little bit also in the Champions League. 4 points off of first place, and that's really all I'm looking at right now. We've talked at length about the way they've played, the way they've scratched out wins. Honestly, you go back and look at Conte's, Premier League title with Chelsea, it was the exact same way. And with even Inter Milan a few years ago in Italy, it was scratch out, win, scratch out, win. It's not sexy. It pisses me off as a Spurs fan because I want him to be more adaptable. I want him to be more malleable in his play style, and he's had to be the past couple weeks because Kulusevski's been out, and Richarlison, Son, and Kane together doesn't really work at that top 3. You've really got 2 strikers playing with Sonny. Really 3 strikers is what it is. I really like call it a 3-5-2, whatever it is. It's a 3-5-2 essentially where they've got Basuma who comes in instead of one of those wingers. It's pretty much Kane and Son up top and then Basuma for Richarlison there with Bentancur and Højbjerg in the midfield. And they look very good with, the ball progression. They just look more in control of games in those situations. But that midfield isn't going to beat City or Arsenal. Like, you're just going to get outclassed in the midfield. The way they're going to beat the Cities, like they did twice last year, I might add, you hit them on the counter. And Conte knows that, and they're going to continue to play that. He's going to continue to play Emerson, whatever. Buy Hakimi next summer. Fuck it. Just kill everybody.
No big deal. Just go buy Hakimi.
Make the knockout rounds. Go spend $100 million on Hakimi, and it's game fucking over. We're not losing a game next year if they do that.
See, that's a TikTok snippet right there.
Yeah, if Conte has Achraf Hakimi as a right wing back, the most important player in his system, good luck to everybody else. No, that's probably an exaggeration, but it would be a huge upgrade, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have anything on Tottenham that you've seen recently? Just not sexy, just like that big.
I was going to say, it's
that Big Ten I formation running attack is basically what they are in the soccer.
It's the least attractive 6-win team I can imagine. And I'm not saying this to be mean, but like the least attractive 6 out of 9 win team. you can see in the Premier League. Like, it is just not a
but
fun
they look
brand of
sexy
football.
when Son is on. Like, ooh, man.
And I think that's a lot of the problem.
It gets a lot prettier when Son is on.
Like today, defensively, it should have been 3. Yeah, it should have been 4-1 if Kane didn't blow a penalty over the bar and Eric Dyer didn't just pass it to the other team. But like, you're right. Like, Son played phenomenally today, and he looked great, and the team looked good.
Yeah,
but he's just looked so uninspired. Isn't necessarily fair, because I'm sure he's.
No, I'll tell you what it is. It's brick feet. Nobody has a first touch on top. You saw that touch from Dyer. Yeah. Brick feet. That's the way Son is. He'll get these Kane passes that they normally connect on, and it goes like 7 yards off to the side.
But then today you see just an absolutely gorgeous volley from
left-footed volley.
Yeah. He's both footed. Like, I've seen enough from him with the left. He's both footed. But for me, I mean, that's the biggest thing for Tottenham. Like, I believe in them as a side. I think there's enough talent there, especially in the forward positions and the back. I think the midfield is a question, but I think Conte's a great manager. I think Hugo Lloris is a phenomenal keeper. Like, the team is good enough.
And Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, one of the most underrated midfielders in the world.
I don't disagree. But
so
overall, that midfield, like you said, isn't going to do what you need it to do.
It's not going to progress the ball.
Right. And while your front three is very talented, they're all kind of guys who need somebody to progress the ball through the midfield. And right now there's not a lot of that on Tottenham. And I think that's Conte's kind of working as best he can with what he has. And that's why it's not a sexy brand of football
the
right now.
The midfielder that progresses the ball is Harry Kane when he drops into the false 9. And that's been the case since Eriksen left. And that's why we're all up in arms about getting a freaking number 10. So James Madison, we will see you in January.
Whoa. Jamesy wants to head to the Tune. We got nice bridges. He's not going to London. You don't have the bridges in London.
Fair enough.
I do think, though, like, if you got an attractive progressive midfielder like that, it would make a world of difference and allow Conte to really open things up. But for right now, it's an ugly, boring 4 points off of first. But that's, if I were a Spurs fan, as frustrating as it would be, like, that would be kind of exciting at the same time. Like, this hasn't been fun, it hasn't been attractive, and here we are.
I want to still feel like our best football is ahead of us. I just don't know. I want to hope it is. We have three midfielders in Basuma, Højbjerg, and Bettencourt. They basically are the same player. Skip is the same player. Oliver Skip's going to be a world-class number 6 when he grows up. But they're all, I mean, there's no progression in the midfield, but that's enough on Spurs. Let's talk about the next 4, if you will. And that might be doing some disservice to Bournemouth because we're not including them in this. Chelsea, Man U, Newcastle, Liverpool. Dylan, how good does it feel to have Liverpool actually be in that conversation? Because y'all have been draw artists for a good portion of the year, but coming off 2 back-to-back wins. Let's start with you guys. Because I think
I know they're not like. I mean, it was Brentford.
They were methodical.
It was Brentford and Fulham, then coming off a 1-1 draw against Bournemouth. So, like, I am still trying to, like, pump the brakes a little, but I'm also freaking pumped. Like, we're seeing a Miguel Almiron that we haven't seen since he played in the MLS.
Why do you think? Because I've noticed that also. Why is he opened up? Why is he this player he is now in your mind?
Because I think there's enough.
The pace is there, right? Sorry to interrupt.
The pace has always been there. I think there's enough creativity around him, and not that the playmaking and the players have changed that much, but the style of play under Bruce, it was so much sit back, and then everybody try to time up together. But now we're playing a more possession-based game where he's allowed to make those runs when he sees fit and utilize that pace when he sees fit. Not like we're going now, I got to go, I feel pressure, I'm on the ball, and I have to create on my own. Like, he's being put into space, and when he's in space out, I still don't love him in space in the box. I know that's hard to say because he's been scoring goals recently, but I still don't believe in him as a goal scorer per se. But he's a guy that I have gotten a ton of crap for as a player, as a Newcastle fan, like how bad he is. But And sure, if we're going to be competing for Europa League or Champions League, like, long-term, Miguel Almiron is not a starter on a European side.
He's like your Lucas Moura for us. Like, coming in maybe in a cup, running at tired legs. That's
exactly. He's running at tired legs in the 5th round of the EFL because we still want to make a cup, and like that. There's a lot of value in that, especially as your team,
absolutely,
especially as your team in development like Newcastle. Like we want to be competitive as long as we can in as many competitions because that's how you get experience and exposure. And we're a very young side, both manager and player. So I think that's important to have guys like that. And seeing him kind of step into that role, but in the Premier League has been exciting because he's starting matches and in the 80th, he's still running at the tired legs and he has all the pace in the world. So for me, he's been a very pleasant surprise. And I think has kind of been somewhat of a difference maker. I know everybody, myself included, was absolutely ecstatic about Bruno's brace in the last match. But I think for me, Miggy's been kind of the difference the last 2 matches. But overall, I mean, we're playing a bend don't break, which is what Steve Bruce always tried to play. Like that's I think why we have 5 draws.
I relate. 100% relate.
We're doing it in a way that we can also go win a game 5-1, or we can also go win a game 4-1, and we can take it to those somewhat lesser teams at times. And it's just so damn exciting after putting up with Bruce balls for so long, just having a more progressive manager. If you look at the pressing charts and the pressing statistics throughout the Prem, I think we're second most pressing team, but we're not pressing because we're desperate at end of matches. We're pressing because it's what we do best. We have the pace, we have the legs, and it's working for us. And the fact that our 2 best games output wise are without our record club signing striker and without ASM.
Oh, is he out?
He's been hurt for like 3 or 4 matches, and ASM's been hurt for 3 or 4 matches. ASM came in as a sub this last match, but the fact that we're doing this without some of our most prolific, most exciting offensive players is even more exciting. That being said, like I do have realistic expectations. I know we're ahead of Liverpool by 4 points, but they have a game in hand on us, so all intents and purposes, we're only ahead of Liverpool by a point, arguably.
Will they win that game in hand, though?
Like I said, arguably.
Yeah.
So like
go ahead.
And Man U's been so solid since the end of the transfer window, and Chelsea's been so solid.
In the Premier League, they have been, yeah.
Right. I think they've kind of Europe. Like we talked about this before the pod, like kind of like Spurs treated Conference League last year. Like they don't care right now. They have more important fish to fry. So I am still realistic at this point. As excited as I am, I don't see us finishing ahead of Chelsea, Manchester United, or Liverpool. But it's exciting to just be in the conversation. I think you kind of made a face after Liverpool. I do think Liverpool,
I see y'all finishing ahead of Liverpool. I really do. I think they're
so injuries. I think they're so injury stricken, but at some point, probably around January.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably around January.
Before we start talking about, I just want to back up for just a second. I have one more Newcastle question for you. What is Bruno for y'all? What is his role?
The best midfielder in the history of Newcastle. I mean, that's what he is.
Will be. But what is he? Are you going to consistently count on him for 10 goals a season? Is he going to be like an 8-8 guy? Is he just going to be a maestro in the midfield? I know he's still young, and really, I mean, it's been less than a year. He's still getting his feet under him, I guess, in the Prem. But like, what is he for Newcastle in 5 years?
That's a huge question. Like for the next 12 months, is I think Eddie and the management team have a huge question to ask of him and of themselves and what they see.
Because as y'all go get signings, you have to be like, okay, what is Bruno and what do we need?
Right, because right now he's playing in that more defensive midfield role where he can press the ball forward from that defensive midfield role, and as we've seen, he's got a couple braces already since he's been at Newcastle. Like we see he can score. So a lot of fans and I was on this camp going into the year. Like I want to see us get a defensive midfielder so we can kind of unlock him and unleash him moving forward.
Let him play that number 8.
And we keep seeing like these James Maddison links and these like more progressive, or Paqueta before he went to what, like these more progressive midfielders, and so many Newcastle fans are like, man, no, we want a defensive midfielder so Bruno can be that guy. But part of me at this point is like, Bruno's great where he's at. Like he's putting together performances offensively and defensively and possession wise, like phenomenally where he's at. So like, sure, when we purchased him, we saw him as a guy who was going to hold over, be that defensive midfielder that can spread the ball and create from the back. But in the future, he's going to be kind of that more Paqueta, flary, brilliant touch Brazilian.
That creative and flary.
Like that's what we thought.
Or will he be more like a Casemiro facilitation type?
I almost see him as now I'm seeing him as a hybrid. When we purchased him, I think it was, this is the next Paqueta. If we can pair him with Paqueta and then just throw me at defensive mid, like that's a great midfield. But now I like where I'm standing, I want to see him stay where he's at. He's been brilliant where he's at. He seems to love where he's at. Like, which is a lot to ask, like not to stereotype too many footballers, but a young Brazilian with that much pizzazz, like it's a lot to ask him to play in that kind of holding position at times and not be as, forward thinking at all times, because you do have those.
It feels like it does limit him a little bit if you keep him at that number 6.
It seems,
but it's
like
also the most valuable. It's also the most valuable position in the Premier League,
and it's hard to find.
6.
It's so hard to find that like elite.
It's hard to find a great one.
Like John Joe Shelby was so good at half of that job. He was so good at extending those long balls and pressing play from the back, but wasn't as solid at those defensive responsibilities. And we're seeing Bruno exceeding him on both levels. And I don't necessarily, I've changed my mind in the last month, honestly, on this. I don't necessarily want to see him change his position. Like for me now, Maddison is probably my number one target. You pair Maddison on one with Joe Linton on the other and Bruno behind. Like I think that is a absolutely disgustingly formidable midfield for 5-10 years to come. And we've already started to build an attacking presence. So for me, I want Bruno to kind of stay where he's at. But there is a lot of sentiment around the club and around the fan base where we still want a defensive midfielder so we can kind of unleash him forward. I get both sides. For me, like I said with Arsenal, don't fix what ain't broke. Like he's been one of the better midfielders in all of the Premier League since he's come over, and he's been playing that kind of holding. I don't even like using holding because he's holding at times, but then goes and scores. Just phenomenal forward.
Yeah, I don't like holding either. I like pivot much more than I like holding.
When the ball's
facilitation,
when the ball's in our half, like he does kind of, he can play that holding when like that. That's why I do think he's so unique, because he can pivot in that final third and be that facilitator and creator, but he also can, you're up 2 goals on the 7th place team and you're in 5th. He can play that holding mid, and that's what's so exciting about him. Where he's
a transition. You transition from defense to offense. Maybe you don't facilitate the offense, but you do a good job of that transition role. The 6 is it's such an incredible position in the sport. And I'm obsessed with 6 midfielders because in different leagues they mean different things, and it's something we could do a whole episode on. The reason I ask about Bruno is because y'all's transfer windows going forward are going to be kind of designed around, okay, he's our centerpiece. What's our system around him going to be? Where is he going to fit in? And maybe he's just that free roaming type of
whatever you can get a better
will
deal
be, or
on.
a Chouameni will be for Madrid. Those are lofty comparisons, but they're not attacking. They're CDMs, but they're the modern day midfielders just so advanced.
I think that's part of the thing with him and some players too is, and I think that's where fans like us kind of bring a bit of a unique perspective is, I've been a soccer fan for a while, but not as in depth as I have in the last few years. And so many fans have been fans for 20, 30 years, sometimes have a hard time looking at the game in a new way. And that's why I kind of struggle to label him as a pivoter, label him as a holding. Like he's him. That sounds like cliche, but
Boom.
He's him. He's Bruno, and and he's just a different type of footballer that doesn't really fit the molds of the Premier League or international football of 10 years ago. And that sounds super dramatic for a guy who's not going to start on his national team at the World Cup, but like that's just kind of
that's just because their system. It's like
right.
But
that's just kind of where I'm at with him. Like he is whatever we need him to be, and I think it can be in that pivot / holding defensive, or be in that more progressive if we find a great true defensive mid. Like he puts us in a really good spot.
I'm going to executive decision this one. It's the only thing I'm going to say about Chelsea and Man United. I see them ultimately fighting for that 4 spot. Would you agree with that? Just real fast, yes or no?
Yeah. I see leaning towards Chelsea. I see it being between those two.
I've seen a lot more out of Chelsea recently. They look better.
I think Man U has. I mean, it's hard to say Man U hasn't as well. They've won 4 out of their last 5 in the Prem. They also don't have to play Champions League, which is a plus. If they want to just throw Europa, they can. I don't think anybody will really.
Similar to a Tottenham situation last year.
I don't think anybody really looks down on them. So that's the one plus for Man U. But as a full side with manager included and everything, I lean Chelsea. And then I lean Man U for the 6. So I do think Newcastle and Liverpool are fighting for possibly, if all the cards fall right, a conference league. But like, that's kind
Liverpool
of fun.
In the Conference League just makes me laugh my butt.
Yeah, like I would love to make the Conference League as a Newcastle fan just to say we made Europe, but it would also be awesome to have to watch Liverpool go play Conference League matches.
Yeah,
we'll sit this one out for a year just so we can watch Liverpool.
Klopp, how do you feel about going to Murrah, baby? How do you feel about that?
Wait
pitch?
to hear him complain about the pitch.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Or the locker room or whatever, the bus that day.
Let's move on to the relegation battle real quick. It's all a shit show at the bottom of the table. Is
Leicester screwed?
They're going to get rid of. Are they going to get rid of Madison in January or in the summer? Because when they get rid of him, it's over. I also think.
Is it not over without getting rid of him? They've lost 7 of 9.
Probably, it probably is over. But I just still look at
their hand's going to be forced. Like.
Yeah.
You will get more for him in January selling him to Tottenham or Newcastle, the 2 likeliest bidders, in the middle of hunts for Europe or hunts for titles than you will in the summer. And if you're sitting right now at 7 losses out of
4
9,
points. They're on 4 points. Southampton's sitting at 17th with 7. Ultimately, I think Southampton and Wolves flip. I'll have my relegation teams as well. Shit, and then you got, I don't know, dude. It's all a mess. Like, will Bournemouth eventually fall back down? Not the way they're playing right now.
I don't know. They haven't lost a game in the last 5. I want to say yes because they're not good, but
I think
hard to argue with form.
Forest is my most confident relegation pick right now.
I think I agree, which is funny because I was so confident they weren't going down.
I was like, maybe they're finishing 10th, maybe 9th.
Yeah, right.
I think a lot of us were, and then Fulham. Fulham, I kind of had them in that 12. I think we both did.
Fine.
I thought they would be the best. I still think they'll end up being the best out of the newly promoted teams. Everton looks fine. Everton's going to finish 11, 10, 11, 12, 13. Leeds, not 10. Okay, I take away 10.
Yeah. They're going to finish like 13 to 16, I bet.
Because I think West Ham will eventually get up to 10.
Yep.
I think Brentford, Everton, Leeds, and Palace are going to be right there in that posh mix. I think Villa could get into that mix, but the way it's looking right now, they're going to be further towards relegation.
They'll be fine.
They will be
I'm
fine.
Not worried about Villa.
I see them like 15. I do think Bournemouth will come back down to earth, but they're not having anybody in the World Cup. And if they're sitting if they're sitting 9th going into the January transfer window,
they're not.
Will they?
They're not. They're literally one weekend out of 14th.
They have Fulham and Southampton next.
I'm just saying, but
I know I get what you're saying.
They're one like yes, they're in 8th. It's sexy, it's attractive, it's fun, it's exciting, but they're 3 points ahead of 16th technically. because there's a bunch of teams at 9 points.
Yeah.
Like,
but what if
I'm just not sold on them being for real yet. Like
I don't think they're for real by any means.
I don't even see them like not being in the conversation. Like they will finish below Villa, they will finish below Palace and Leeds and West Ham and Fulham and Liverpool.
So you see them getting back into the 17,
15,
18,
16,
19.
17. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just haven't seen enough out of them that's exciting. And I know I was just saying, form's great.
I haven't seen anything out of Tottenham that's exciting either. But that's a different team.
Fair. That's fair.
I do think these next two matches, if you can get a draw with Fulham and a win versus Southampton, you're in a good spot going into those. I mean, World Cup. You've got
for sure.
Chelsea after the World Cup. These going into the World Cup break, they've got Fulham, Southampton, West Ham, Tottenham, Everton, and Leeds. Besides Tottenham, those games are huge for all those teams.
I mean, they're not beating West Ham.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not beating Leeds, but they could get points from Leeds. They can get
Leeds
points
has
from
become
Fulham.
pretty good
they
draw
can get
artists right
points.
now.
Yeah, they can get points from. I mean, they can get points from 3 of those 5. Like I don't see as much as I like to shit on. Sorry, Spotify. West Ham because they stole.
We're past the point
of
us. Apologizing to Spotify. We're past
because they stole Paqueta from us and didn't look good for a while, but now they look good. I mean, West Ham's not a bad side. I know technically they're in 13th, but they're also only 4 points out of 7th. Like it is early, so like I'm not trying to look too much into like technical standings. Yeah. I think West Ham's a good side, so I think by the World Cup we're seeing Bournemouth at like 14, 15, 16. Maybe not in that 17 to 20, but I see a pretty quick drop off.
So you don't think they're finishing ahead of Liverpool?
No.
Which is where they are right now.
No, I don't see them finishing ahead of really anybody until Southampton that they're ahead of right now.
Another thing, just mentioning West Ham made me remember. I meant to say this in the Tottenham portion, but they've already played their away derbies at West Ham, Chelsea, and Arsenal. They've already gotten those out of the way. So that makes me more confident because Tottenham is a beast at home. They're a lot of the big 6 clubs. They're tough to beat at home. So I love that we've already gotten those games out of the way and gotten points out of 2 of them. So that's besides the point. Are we good with the Premier League? You want to move? We're at 47 minutes. You want to move on to the rest of the world? Who are your 3 relegation teams right now?
Oh, you're gonna make me do this right now, like on record. I'm gonna have to go Nottingham.
It's never on record, but it is on record
for the like 70, 80 listens we get. I'm gonna go Leicester, Forest, and Bournemouth. Yeah.
Okay,
Leicester, Forest, and Bournemouth. I actually feel pretty confident in that. I feel pretty confident in that.
I'm going Leicester, Forest, Southampton.
See, there's too much. I mean, not that there's
a lot,
but there's enough there to survive. I mean, Kyle Walker-Peters is a very solid player. They have the best, maybe not the best, one of the best free kick artists in world football.
Second percentage-wise all time.
Shea Adams is a very solid bottom third Premier League forward. Like, I think there's enough there compared to and enough there that they're not going to sell. That's the biggest thing. Like I put Leicester there purely because I expect them to sell. If they don't sell, they should and likely will finish ahead of Southampton. But like at this point, I just don't see a world where they don't sell at least 2 of their 4, if we want to count Jamie Vardy, which he's not playing a lot. So even really, I'll say 2 of their 3. Studs. Okay. Like I don't see a world where they don't sell 2 of them. So that's why I have Leicester there. If they're to hold on to 2 of those 3, they might be able to survive and scratch and claw. But at this point, I almost think they would be better suited to sell in January. As crazy as that sounds, and I'm sure Leicester fans look at it through a completely different lens, but like financially, you will get more for those players in January, a lot more. And I know their books are not the cleanest right now. You will get a lot more for them in January than a relegated side in June.
Probably, yeah. Speaking of financials, let's move on to world football.
What a transition.
After that transition, I almost want to start off with Barcelona, but we're going to start off with the richest athlete in the world, speculatively, if those numbers from his contract were correct. Kylian Mbappe has decided that he's going to put himself in the news again. My theory is that Erling Haaland is setting the world on fire, and Mbappe's PR team is like, let's create some sort of buzz. So if you guys missed it, a lot of our audience might have, if you're just like a casual U.S. fan. Mom, Dad, you probably missed it. Kylian Mbappe.
The second best player in the world.
Second best player in the world. He could be the best player in the world, but goal scorer, he's not. He plays for PSG. He's their winger, right winger, because Neymar's on the left, correct? Or flip, whatever it is. He plays attack for PSG. He's a French international superstar, signed the largest contract in the history of sports this offseason, basically gave him the keys to the country of France, the city of Paris, the club. He's pretty much the sporting director, pretty much the manager. They gave him everything you could possibly want. But he remained in the French league, which just does not get the hype that the Premier League or La Liga does, especially La Liga.
Or Serie A.
Or Serie A.
Bundesliga. Like really any of them.
Really any of them.
You can go with MLS and be a bigger name, arguably. I say that jokingly, but like he truly.
But the world can watch MLS games.
Right.
The world can't watch the French league games, and that's a huge deterrent. And anyways, Mbappe basically has come out, or somebody, it's been leaked that he's unhappy at PSG and wants out in January. What do you have to say about that?
If he's unhappy, it's his own doing. He had Real Madrid.
How can you be unhappy? He's playing with Messi and Neymar up top.
Because he's playing with Messi and Neymar. Because Messi is a bigger name in international football. He's not a better player.
Neymar's the best player in the world right now. Right now.
Or arguably it. Like there's a very good argument for that right now. I still think Mbappe is probably a bigger name in world football, but Messi's a bigger name, and Messi's the third, arguably, maybe even lower, the third best player on his own team. So like that's probably the only thing he could even maybe be frustrated with. I'm going to
go ahead and save you on that. Messi isn't the third best player on PSG.
Okay. I didn't want to be the one to say he wasn't.
I get what you're saying. He could be perceived as being the number 3 at any given point.
I didn't want to say he wasn't the third best because he's probably lower.
He's having a great year.
He is, but like I don't know. The way he played last year, I'm still hesitant. But
PSG's really fucking good, is what we're trying to say.
Yes, they played a weird system last year that didn't curtail to his numbers, but. All of that aside,
he hit the crossbar like 17 times.
I think an interesting thing about this whole Mbappe saga is the timing that the Messi back to Barcelona news also broke. And I haven't seen weird. I think this isn't my authentic, genuine Dylan Wilcox trademark thought. I did see this by one person on Twitter, and I'm on. I
didn't see it, and I was on Twitter
for soccer.
I was on Twitter a lot today, and I didn't see it. So if you want to take credit for it, go for it. Because that's I
think it's a little like you said. I do think possibly the Haaland getting all the hype and all the love, and Mbappe sitting here with 13 goals in 14 games across all competitions, also playing phenomenally right now. No doubt about it. Like you said, I think he's the better player than Haaland, but Haaland's the better scorer, so he's getting the attention because he's putting up the sexy, fun numbers. But I think a lot more of it has to do with the Messi back to Barcelona talks, and
that's something that didn't cross my mind. But that's a very, very good thing to bring up.
And
let me ask you why.
I think it is for the same reason you said the Haaland stuff. I think it's the attention thing. If anybody's abandoning PSG, it's me because I am the bigger story. I don't want Messi leaving PSG to gain all the traction, to gain all the headlines, because if Messi were to leave and it was Mbappe and Neymar, I don't, as amazing as Messi still is, I don't think his numbers changed drastically. I think he's still a Ballon d'Or finalist. I think this year he.
You don't think Mbappe's numbers changed drastically?
Yeah, no. Like
I think they go up.
Yeah, no, they arguably could. Like I don't see him creating this drama or wanting to leave because he thinks it's detrimental to his career. It's more of like a statement, like, I am PSG. If anybody's leaving PSG, it's me. And there were Neymar rumors, not since the season started because he's been playing out of his freaking mind, but there were Neymar rumors in summer about him being unhappy and maybe wanting to leave. And he's seeing all of this. He's going, whoa, no, this is my team. Nobody's abandoning me. I'm abandoning them. Like, and I hate saying all this because I don't know him on a personal level. It's all speculative.
Oh yeah, it's all speculation.
There's not a lot of information on it. And I loved Mbappe in the last World Cup. Like, I was ready to. I have never rooted for France as an Italian national team fan. I despise France.
You need to stop yourself right now before you say something you're going to regret and be outcasted by all Italians.
I was damn near ready to buy an Mbappe World Cup jersey. Like, I'm not even going to lie. Like, I was that in love with Mbappe at the last World Cup. Like, it was the most appointment television World Cup soccer for me. Like, it was incredible. I was in love with his play style, his personality, and he's done a complete 180, and he is the biggest, like, self-centered blank bag, got you Spotify, like, out there in world football right now. So it seems. And I don't know.
Everybody's calling him out for it too.
And I don't know if it's a PR stunt again to stir up hype or make it about him, like we've both said. But man, it's a really bad look. And the other side of it to kind of get off of just bashing him is like, if this is, for a second, let's pretend this is real. Let's pretend he actually wants to leave. Who wants him? And that sounds bizarre because, like we said, he may be the best player in the world right now, but who is willing to spend 250 million pounds, dollars, euros, whatever you want to equate it out to, 300 million euros, whatever you want to call it? Who's willing to spend that on a person you also have to spend 250,000 in wages a week on at this point in the financials of world football? Like, I think he's phenomenal.
We'll go on to the next part of this because we talked about this earlier in the week, and you brought up there's a player that you might only have to wait a summer or two for. This is twofold. Part of me goes, Mbappe wants no part of the Premier League. He doesn't want to get boat raced by Haaland for the Golden Boot every year. And right now, Haaland at Man City, you can put Mbappe on literally any team in the Premier League. Haaland is scoring at least 5 to 10 more goals than him a season. And Mbappe is a world-class talent. Oh, yeah.
It is
wingers
what it is.
Wingers just don't – well,
he's a winger.
I'm not going to say that because Son and Salah won the last 2 Golden Boots, but
he's one of those types. He's a forward winger. Like,
yeah,
there's an ASM winger and then there's a Salah Son winger. Like, there is a little bit different wingers. But I get what you're saying. But, like, at the end of the day, this Haaland Man City, match made in heaven, nobody's competing with him because he does appear to be so egotistical. I don't see him wanting to go to the Premier League. However, those are the only teams I think that would spend the money on him because I believe it just came out like 3 days ago. In 2024, the best goal scorer, as we've said, Erling Haaland, has a 170 million pound, I believe, not euro, pound release clause that can be triggered by any non-Premier League team. So anybody in the Prem, if you want one of the 2 best players in the world, 2 best goal scorers in the world, you got one option. And it's a guy that, in my opinion, isn't going to want to go to the Prem. If you're Real, who's the only other person,
let's call it like it is. We're talking about Real Madrid and who they're going to pick between Haaland later.
And let's be honest, they're in a bit of a transition period. It feels like I think Benzema
Madrid?
has, a little bit.
I think Haaland's release clause will time up
fit their timeline perfectly. Exactly
when Benzema's done perfectly.
Exactly.
And if you want to play Mbappe on the wing, which I think is his natural position, truly, Rodrigo just got Team of the Week in the Champions League. Like, and are you going to play him over Vinicius? I mean, I get like depth wise and such, but
Yeah, I mean, you're
Real
not
Madrid's going to
signing
want to replace Karim Benzema, and Erling Haaland is Benzema 3.0. At least I think he will
reportedly,
be.
again, there's a chance that Mbappe has the best PR media relations team in the history of world football, and this was all just conjured up by his people. But allegedly, he is the one that said no to Real Madrid. And I think in doing that, he may have just locked himself into PSG for a lot longer than he intended. Because
Real Madrid is bigger than Kylian Mbappe.
100%, 100%. Yeah. They have bigger dreams and plans, and I think they would have, if he wanted to go there this year, I do somewhat believe that he picked the very attractive PSG offer over Real, but if he were to have picked Real, I think Real would have welcomed him with open arms and kind of retooled on the fly and done so because he is such a world-class player. But I think now that all this Haaland stuff is out and they've seen what they have on both wings now, because we knew what Vinny was. Vinny was and will be a world-class, and Rodrigo was he's very good, but we've now seen him for another 15 matches, and he is also very, very good. So yeah, I think he's just kind of pigeonholed himself into a spot where man, you're either
he's
going
also
to the
21, younger than Mbappe.
Yeah,
Rodrigo.
Right. He's kind of pigeonholed himself into a spot where you're either going to the EPL or you're playing in the Farmers League for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You could have gone to Real and made that happen this summer. You chose not to, and here you are because Real, at this point, if I'm Real, and like you said earlier, I think very beginning of the podcast, or pre-podcast, Real is a very smartly run club, one of the top 5 logically sound clubs in the world. I bet now they're man, maybe it's a good thing we didn't get him. Maybe we're in a better spot without him. We will be better off. Maybe not next year, but in 2024 we'll be better off. I just really
Real
see
is not going to hoe themselves out for Kylian Mbappe again.
Right, and PSG would, and
yeah.
I understand why they would, because he's the best French player we've seen since He Who Shall Not Be Named headbutting Italians, probably. But I get it. And you're the richest club in France, and you have a very legitimate chance to win the Champions League this year. So I get why they did. Real can win the Champions League whenever the hell they feel like it.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're not going to bend over backwards to go get him now that he turned his nose up at him. And I think he's probably going to regret it. And I think it probably heavily tarnishes his legacy. I think we're seeing
we figured it would.
We're seeing a Messi Ronaldo-esque rivalry per se. That now they don't play in the same league, so it won't be as fun. But we are seeing that type of rivalry and fans taking sides in Mbappe and Haaland, and I think he's going to be drastically on the wrong side of this 5 years from now because of the decision he made in 2022.
Even with Haaland playing for Norway and probably never getting anywhere close to a World Cup.
I don't care.
That's not going to matter.
Neither did the other two we were just discussing either. Neither of them have won one either.
They've each won 35 trophies though. So they
each have their continent trophies and all of that. They have had international success that Haaland won't have, and Mbappe does have a World Cup and possibly multiple World Cups, but I will die on the Haaland hill if things keep progressing like they're seeming to progress.
Yeah.
Speaking of major trophies, though, I got your transition right here. The World Cup. We've talked about this a couple of times. The time of year it's taking place and the impact injuries will have on the World Cup. We're starting to kind of finally see that come to fruition. We saw that oddly timed international break, 2 weeks ago now, maybe. And since then, and in that break, we saw a couple of inconvenient, should we say, injuries come to light, and
pretty
and
crappy injuries. Bad timing.
Like the first one that comes to mind, and because I am so in tune with Twitter, English football Twitter, and I'm guessing you are as well, because of the timing of of the injuries, England had probably the deepest single position of any team in the World Cup. And now we're talking about, not that Kieran Trippier is a bad starting right back, but you're forced to start him and have no depth behind him. Possible.
Well, what sucks is you can't play him on the left now because you have to play him on the right because of the injuries.
Right. Yeah. I mean, losing, Reece James, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who sucks and should never have started for England ever.
He's a winger. He's a fucking
Kyle Walker.
Winger.
But they try to play him in that
I know.
outside back, and it drives me nuts, and it's another reason Gareth Southgate sucks.
And then Reece James is just like an NFL halfback. Like the dude's a unit.
and Kyle Walker is probably the most sound, traditional, honestly probably fit that Gareth Southgate team and play style the best. Of the four, in my opinion, feels wild to say, but is the lesser of the four, but probably fit the system the best. But you lost three of them. So, we don't know for sure the extent of a couple of those, but they're not looking good if they are healthy in time for the World Cup. Kyle Walker,
we're about 1 month and a week out from the World Cup.
And Kyle Walker is officially out until like mid-November. So that's like that point, are you even going to take him on the roster? Because you're going to have to cut one or two of these guys. You're probably not even taking him on the roster. So it's a weird spot.
That also might force England into a back three. You don't think so?
I just can't see it. Southgate is so like boring.
Yeah,
and like he just screams like it's just the 4-man back line because that's how English football should be played. Like he doesn't seem creative enough to do anything else. And I think it could be really detrimental.
We need to start getting our World Cup previews out, by the way. I need to start releasing those. There are a few groups that we need to do over also.
I was going to say, at this point, we might just have to run them back. Because as we're going to touch on here a little bit, like injuries are wild and form is wild. It's been weird. But it's something that as a U.S. fan who did not love what they saw in that mini international break,
God, it was so freaking bad.
Makes me a little bit more hopeful.
Iran's winning that group.
With the U.S. not making it out.
Yeah.
Or hell, both U.S. and England at this point, like who knows? We could both be missing.
We've got Argentina next on this list. I just kind of don't want to talk about them because like with Dybala, he's out. He's going to be, Mourinho said it's a bad injury. He's going to be out for a while. Done. Maria and Messi, I bet they'll be back. Di Maria's looked bad, so maybe not. It looked pretty bad. Messi's going to be
Messi will be fine. Messi will be one of those guys because he plays in the Farmers League, and they'll be fine without him. I wouldn't be surprised if he saw more than 30 minutes a match until the World Cup.
The Griezmann, like
the Griezmann 44 minutes or 50 No. This is how it's going to happen. I need to only play X amount, different reasons, but I need to only play X amount. And what PSG going to do? Tell Messi no when he's thinking about going back to Barcelona? He can do whatever the hell he wants right now. So, Di Maria, I do think will be semi-serious. Dybala is serious, so I think that will kind of change the outlook a little bit for that Argentina team. I do think they're lucky that they're in a group
loaded as hell.
Well, and that they're in a group that if Di Maria is like I said with Walker, like one of those mid-Novembers, like Di Maria is making the team if he's at all healthy by December 1st. It's somebody you can get through group without him if need be. So I think long term they're probably okay, but just
Argentina isn't looking to get out of the group though; they're looking to make that run.
Yeah, and they will get out of the group.
You'll need the Di Maria Messi hookup to do that.
And you may even be able to sit both because if needed, sit both because of that depth. So long term, I do think Argentina will be fine, but just seeing names like Messi, Di Maria, Dybala all getting hurt within a week span. 5 weeks out from the World Cup does kind of highlight what we've been talking about for 3 months now on this podcast, how different this World Cup has made this season.
Yeah.
On the flip side of strong or strong players getting injured. The U.S., man, they've gotten healthy in the last week. I think part of the injury concerns is why we might
not have
to
keep telling myself that after watching this previous break is like we didn't score shit, but we didn't have Weah, Musa, Reyna. Didn't he go out in like the first game or something? Like he didn't play.
Yeah, I think he got hurt in the last Dortmund game. I believe. Don't snip at me on this. I believe he got hurt in the last.
Might start getting more Chelsea playing time. Maybe
it looks like he's starting to. Like I feel like as not promising as that transfer as that international break was. Like I do think getting Reyna, Jedi, Weah, Musa, who all came back in the last 7 days to their clubs and started. I believe Reyna didn't start, but came on at half, I believe. All got significant playing time. It's super promising because I think
Jedi will be huge. We have to have him.
Yes.
I mean, the defensive transition was shambolic.
Seeing the type of injury he had, like, and seeing the injury that like went the play it happened on, like I was like, man, how is he still out? It kind of feels like Greg was on the phone with Fulham and was like, hey, y'all are still winning without him. Can we give him another like 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a goodwill thing. And I think we may see that happen even more as we get closer with some of those teams that aren't fighting for Europe, aren't fighting out of relegation. Those kind of like,
that'll be an interesting wrinkle. Yep.
We're not finishing lower than 14th. We're not finishing higher than 8th. Like, you call me up, international coach. Like, yeah, he can play halftime for the next 2 weeks to make sure he's healthy for you, especially because all of the clubs are getting $10,000 a day for any player that is on a World Cup roster. So like there is some club incentive to keep those guys healthy. To at least get them on.
Tite's on the phone with Newcastle. Hey, y'all aren't qualifying for shit. Like, make sure you sit Bruno a little bit.
Eddie will tell him to shove it where the sun don't shine.
Piss off. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. As bad as the international break was, and this is just me being like a hopeless romantic or a hopeful romantic, whatever. They were missing. Yunus Musa is an engine in that midfield, and Timothy Weah is just an engine on that right wing, and if he needs to, he can slide into that 9 spot. So I think it is promising for the U.S., but it just sucks that they weren't ready for this break because it's basically just going to be, hey, World Cup, let's go, like just get into it. So I think we're at an hour and 12. I think we're going to wrap up this episode. We got a good chunk of kind of what's been going on the last month or so out. You got an update on the Premier League. Go check out the Premier League table if you want a complete breakdown on where everybody is. Not a whole lot of points. Obviously, it's early in the year, so there's obviously not a whole lot of points separating a lot of these teams. But the top's congested. That 9 through 15 is congested, just like we thought it was going to be in the relegation battle. Is just a coin flip, honestly. So we're going to flip around and record a short UCL recap, 30 minutes or so right after this. Thank you guys for listening to the Planet Soccer Podcast. We are so happy to be back. This is my therapy during the week for sure. I haven't gotten to like geek out about soccer in a while, so I'm like, this felt so good. So for me, Reed down here in Texas, for my co-host Dylan up in Michigan, we will talk to you guys in about 10 minutes. Peace.